So now we come to the final part of the cornea presentations, and in this presentation we will discuss about keratoconus, corneal opacities and keratoplasty. Three important short notes for you. Three important short notes. All these three are important need to know areas, so please concentrate with these areas. The first is keratoconus. Keratoconus is a dystrophy. We discussed in the last PPT, we discussed that there is something called degeneration and something called dystrophy. Dystrophy is basically genetically premeditated and occurs in a person, and a dystrophy which occurs following a genetic premeditation is called keratoconus. In keratoconus, the cornea is very conical. Can you see the cornea becomes very conical? Because the cornea is very conical, if you keep the person's, if you stand behind the person and tilt the patient's head and see the lower lid, the lower lid will have a notching because of the bulging of the cone of the cornea, and that is called the Munson's sign. Munson's sign. This Munson's sign shows the conical protrusion of the cornea. It's an important sign. You can see that conical protrusion. Can you see this conical protrusion causes, if the anterior chamber is going to become so very deep, then the person will develop myopia. And because of this curvature, abnormal curvature, the person is going to develop astigmatism. So the question will be, what refractive error the patient will suffer from? A refractive error of a keratoconus patient will be high myopic astigmatism, very high values, very high myopic astigmatism. And this kind of myopic astigmatism, for a very long time, for in the early stages, we can correct it by putting hard contact lenses over the cornea. This is a question. Where do you prefer hard contact lenses? In most of ophthalmology, hard contact lenses is not used anymore, except in keratoconus, to have a restrictive effect on the conical protrusion. But certain times, this kind of conical protrusions keep protruding. We cannot do anything about it. That kind of protrusion it will have, and this at a point of time will breach. The Descemet's membrane will breach, and you develop a hydrops. Hydrops is a complication of a keratoconus. The keratoconus, once it develops hydrops, it will become very painful and it will go for scarring. That kind of feature happens. And the cone, if the base of the cone will have a Fleischer's ring. A Fleischer's ring is an iron pigmented ring which will be present in the base of the keratoconus cone. In the keratoconus cone, if you see fundus, you will see an oil droplet sign. You will see an oil droplet in the fundus. And if you do retinoscopy, you will get a scissoring reflex on retinoscopy. So please remember these. All these are 2 mark questions. I'll repeat once more for them. If you get a scissoring reflex, keratoconus. If you get an oil droplet sign when you see fundus examination, keratoconus. If you see a Fleischer ring at the base of the cone, it is keratoconus. If you have a hydrops is a complication of keratoconus. A keratoconus patient will have myopic astigmatism. Keratoconus patient will have a Munson's sign. If you do a keratometry, K reading in these patients, K readings will be very severe. It will be almost near 52 diopters. I told you, the normal range is somewhere around 44 to 46 diopters. 44 to 46 diopters will be the normal range of K reading. But here it will even go to the level of 52 diopters in advanced stages. In a keratoconus patient, if you keep a Placido's disc, then you will get this distorted Meyers, distorted conical distortion of the Meyers. And if you do a topography, you will see red areas. This red area shows very much thinned and very much conically protruded areas, and the blue areas are flat areas. So these are flat areas, these are thin and conically protruded areas. So in this slide itself, we have around 15 points in this slide. So I want you to be thorough of keratoconus, because keratoconus in itself is a short notes for you. And all these small individual points which I told you are MCQ points. Okay. Next is corneal opacity. In a cornea, you can see a very faint opacity. Then you call it nebula. Or you can see a bit thicker opacity. You call it macula. Or you can see a chalk white opacity. You call it leucoma. So these are the three levels of opacities. By the density, you call it as nebulous opacity, macular opacity, or leucomatous opacity. Three opacities are possible. If that opacity has iris stuck to it, we discussed, if you remember, in corneal ulcer, we said the cornea is about to perforate, iris comes and plugs it. If it heals up, then you will have an opacity with an iris plug. That is called adherent leucoma. That is called an adherent leucoma. Leucoma with iris adherent to it. If there is a corneal facet is where the cornea itself is flattened. Cornea itself is flattened by the opacity's remodeling. The opacity scar tissue remodels and becomes flat, and that is called a corneal facet. It will not have a uniform curvature of the cornea. It will have a different curvature. Keratectasia is where bulging happens. The cornea is, the opacity has become very thin, and that opacity has started bulging, and that bulging is called staphyloma. If I say keratectasia, it is basically bulging localized. If I say staphyloma, it is bulging almost fully of the anterior chamber of the eye. That kind of bulging is called staphyloma. Okay, staphyloma. So these are the possible opacities. I'll revise once more. This is nebula, very faint. Bit more thick, it is macula. Very thick, it is leucoma. Adherent, it is adherent leucoma. Okay, and a facet, you can have a keratectasia, you can have an anterior staphyloma. So the climax of corneal topics is keratoplasty or corneal transplantation. I'm sure you cannot get through in the examination without answering at least 1 or 2 questions on corneal transplantation, both in your theory paper and in your practical examination. Corneal transplantation or keratoplasty is done from an eye bank stored cornea, a cornea stored in an eye bank. Who donates a cornea? Cornea is donated only by persons after their death. You can pledge your cornea now, but you cannot donate it as a live person. You can only donate it after your death. 6 to 8 hours after death occurs, if the relatives of the dead person immediately phones up an eye bank, the eye bank will send an enucleation team. That team will go and get the corneoscleral button of the person and store it in moist saline chambers and bring it to the eye bank. In the eye bank, they will evaluate the cornea, see whether it is healthy, whether it is not infected, whether it has a good endothelial count. All these factors they'll check, and then they'll decide whether they have a patient to immediately do keratoplasty. If that is well and good. If not, then they can have the option of storing it in a MK medium. MK medium can be used to preserve this cornea for using it on a person later, like after 3 days or 4 days. Or we can use a chondroitin sulfate medium and get it stored for a week or more. If you want to store it for a very long time, then you have to use cryopreservation. So this is the story of short-term preservation, intermediate preservation, and long-term preservation in corneal donation. So corneal donation is done only by dead people. It cannot be, it is usually a cadaver donation. It cannot be done by a live person. That is the point number 1 I want you to remember. Second point, the golden hour is 6 hours. Forget even the 8 hours. Think of the 6 hours. The golden hour is 6 hours in corneal donation. And once you have harvested this cornea, you have to examine the cornea for the eye bank will have equipments to examine the cornea for its healthiness, and simultaneously you have to check the blood of the person to see whether he is suffering from hepatitis B or HIV. And then once all are cleared, then this cornea is fit for being transplanted into a needy person. Even cornea can be stored by McCarrick-Hoffman medium, chondroitin medium, or cryopreservation. So the keratoplasties are of two types. One is therapeutic keratoplasty. The easier to understand is therapeutic keratoplasty. We already discussed, therapeutic keratoplasty is done in corneal ulcer. In ulcer patients, when they are about to perforate or they are perforated, that sick, diseased cornea is removed, that corneal button is removed, and the donor cornea is kept in that place. See, the diseased cornea is removed, the donor cornea is placed here, and it is stitched. The stitches are 16 radial sutures, 16 radial sutures with 10 suture material. 10O suture material is used. 16 sutures made of 10O suture material is used to stitch the cornea button to the recipient. This is done in therapeutic keratoplasty. The same can be done in a non-diseased cornea also. That is a non-infected cornea. Like we discussed keratoconus patient or a corneal scar patient. In these patients also you can do the same thing. You can do the same corneal stitching in a transplantation in a person who is needing it, not because of corneal ulcer, but because of these different reasons. Then it is called optical keratoplasty. The main logic to understand this is done for vision. The cornea is deformed because of something like opacity or a keratoconus. You have to remove it and keep a donor cornea. The patient will get back his vision. That is optical keratoplasty. Here cornea is diseased and ulcered, and it is about to perforate. In that situation, you are doing a corneal transplant. Then it is called a therapeutic keratoplasty. Therapeutic keratoplasty. So please remember, you forget about tectonic. Don't try to understand this. Just remember therapeutic and optical. Where you take a corneal button, there is a trephine for this. The instrument used to take a corneal button is called a corneal trephine. And this trephine is used to remove a corneal button. And once the recipient's button is removed, the donor button is placed in that place, and 10-0 sutures are used to make 16 interrupted sutures. Okay. Now, slowly, this kind of full thickness keratoplasty, what we have discussed here, both these entities are full thickness keratoplasties. This full thickness keratoplasties is not considered modern. It is considered wasteful, because in a person, the 5 layers of cornea might not be equally damaged. Like in a person with keratoconus, his stroma and epithelium is mainly damaged. In a person with pseudophakic bullous keratopathy, his endothelium and decimates are mainly damaged. In a corneal ulcer about to perforate patient, anterior layers are damaged, decimates and endothelium are intact. So in every patient, you understand that the corneal layers are affected partially, not totally. So now the concept is, even the donor cornea, we take it into 2 lamellae. The anterior lamellae, which is mainly epithelium, Bowman's and stroma. Posterior lamellae, which is basically decimates and endothelium. So this kind of layer separation creates 2 buttons. One anterior corneal button, one posterior corneal button. So this can be used for 2 patients. So one donor cornea can be used for 2 patients. That is the advantage of lamellar keratoplasty. So lamellar keratoplasty is what is being used nowadays. In keratoconus, there will be a question which will ask you, what is DALK? What is DALK? DALK is deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty. So DALK is in a way not optical keratoplasty. It is not an optical keratoplasty because it is not a full thickness optical keratoplasty. It is a partial thickness optical keratoplasty, and that is the advantage of Galk. So please remember this when you are questioned on keratoplasty. So keratoplasty, after having done keratoplasty, do you face complications? Yes, we face a lot of complications. Is rejection is a big complication? Partially yes, because the cornea is a avascular structure. Because the cornea is avascular, most of the times the cornea will not have much of an immune response because of the avascularity. Not a big immune reaction is mounted. So immunological rejection is very rare in corneal buttons, but it is seen. It's not like it is never seen. If it is seen, it is called graft rejection, but it is a rare complication. More is wound leak, because I am putting 16 sutures now, wound leak. Persistent epithelial defects, the 16 sutures might irritate and cause epithelial defects and they might not heal. There can be edema of the graft. There can be infection of the graft. The graft can get infected. There can be an endophthalmitis, as in any other surgery, there can be endophthalmitis. These are the complications of a keratoplastic procedure in the early phase. In the late phase, we can have loose sutures. Lot of loose sutures can be there. There can be high astigmatism. There can be high, because there are 16 sutures now. There can be high astigmatism. This kind of issues can occur in the late phase. In the very late phase, there can be wound dehiscence. Patient will be done a keratoplasty, will be almost normal for a very long time, then suddenly develops a disease recurrence in the donor button, or he develops a wound dehiscence in the donor cornea. So with that, we complete cornea. We have analyzed cornea as two grand portions. One is the basics, another is the diseases. In basics, we went into investigations, instrumentation, layers, basic physiology and anatomy and biochemistry of the cornea. And in diseases, we have covered corneal ulcer. Then we went into corneal degenerations and dystrophies. We also discussed corneal opacities, and we finally finished with corneal surgery, which is keratoplasty. So please revise these chapters and be thorough with cornea, because cataract and cornea are essential need to know areas for you. So you cannot escape without knowing thoroughly about these two areas. Thanks one and all.